Hi everyone, welcome to ANO Camera, pronounced Ano. On this channel, I test vintage lenses on my Sony A7 III. Many old lenses cannot normally be mounted on modern cameras, so I create custom 3D printed adapters to use them. My goal is to explore the character and performance of these lenses under controlled conditions. I hope these videos help you discover your next favorite lens. Alright, are you ready? Today's camera is the Konica Auto S. It is a rangefinder film camera equipped with a HEXANON lens, released during the 1960s and 1970s. The Konica Auto S was released in 1963 and is considered a milestone camera because it was the first in the world to feature shutter priority EE, automatic exposure, with a CD's light meter. It also came with a fast 47mm f/1.9 lens. I've already taken the camera apart, so I no longer have the body with me, but I remember the first time I held it, it felt like a solid block of metal. When I checked the weight, I found out it was about 750 grams. Modern cameras can also be large and heavy, but they usually have many functions packed inside. This camera, on the other hand, only has one major feature: shutter priority automatic exposure. It really makes you feel how much camera technology has changed over time. The lens is a HEXANON, which had a very good reputation back then, but honestly, I didn't have high expectations. When I first picked up the camera, my impression was simply, wow, this thing is heavy. There is also a black part near the shutter button, which I think is the light meter. When holding the camera, it touches my index finger, and because of that, I actually found the camera quite uncomfortable to hold. I didn't really know anything about this lens, but my attitude was basically, well, let's just try it and see what happens. I'll show you some measurements and the 3D design data that I used as a reference for making the adapter. The Sony mount side was already designed as 3D data, so after removing the lens, I created several versions by trial and error until I found the correct position where the lens could focus from close distances all the way to infinity. The adapter I'm actually using now is a little different, but this design can properly lock onto a Sony camera. If you know how to use 3D modeling software, I hope this information can be useful for you. I almost forgot to mention this, but removing this lens was actually quite difficult. After all, I'm just an amateur. The shutter was especially challenging. The aperture blades and the shutter mechanism are attached to the lens, but I couldn't figure out the proper way to remove the shutter cleanly. In the end, I had to forcefully tear it apart. So, some parts of the shutter are still left around the edge of the lens. Well, I don't think it affects the image quality very much. Alright, now let's talk about the shooting conditions. I'll shoot wide open, and if possible, I'll also test the lens at f/8. The camera settings will stay the same for every lens so we can compare them fairly. I made an original test chart for these lens tests. For me, I mainly want to see how well the center and the upper right area are resolved. Alright, let's start by shooting the center wide open. Let's look at the test results. First, let's check the image shot wide open. I think the center is definitely sharp enough. As we move toward the edges, however, this lens gradually becomes softer. There is also a smooth amount of vignetting toward the corners. Next, this image was taken stop down to f/8. The center looks even better than before. The edges, which were blurry at wide open, have improved significantly. The vignetting also seems to be much better. Honestly, it's hard to believe this kind of image comes from such an old lens. Let's look at the backlight test. This image was shot wide open, and this lens produces a blue flare around the edges of the frame. I think the color of the flare looks really beautiful. I wonder if every lens produces different colors of flare like this. At f/8, the blue flare is still there, but you can clearly see the 5-sided shape of the aperture, which gives it a really cool look. I wonder if modern lenses still have 5-sided aperture blades. Even details like this make me feel the age and character of old lenses. Let's go outside and start taking some photos. Just a quick note about the sample images this time. Some of the photos were shot wide open, and some were taken stop down to f/8. Also, the images were processed using the landscape profile in the editing software. Of course, with digital cameras, being able to check the image right after taking a photo is something we take for granted now. But honestly, when I saw the very first image from this lens, I was surprised. I thought, wow, this looks beautiful. I couldn't believe that this was an image produced by such an old lens. The colors and the way it renders out of focus areas were exactly the kind of look I love, so I was really happy. It made me feel that all the effort of adapting this lens to a Sony camera was worth it. It looks great even when shot wide open, and when stopped down to f/8, it becomes much sharper. I also discovered that the colors have a slightly different character depending on the aperture setting. If you ever get the chance, I highly recommend trying this camera with film as well.